Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This video uses AI narration to present our original book analysis. Today, we're diving into These Truths by Jill Lepore. It's a sweeping and at times unsettling look at American history. Get ready to rethink what you thought you knew about America's past.
Yeah, it's a monumental work for sure. Tackling the question of what it really means to build a nation on this ideal of political equality while, wrestling with all of its inherent contradictions.
And Lepore doesn't shy away from those contradictions.
Oh, absolutely not. She traces those contradictions from Columbus to the internet age.
Right from the start, Lepore challenges that traditional, almost mythical narrative of America's origins. She dives into how early historians like George Bancroft essentially crafted a founding myth that links 1776 all the way back to 1492. It's like he artificially extended America's history by 3 centuries to make its founding seem almost divinely ordained. But what's interesting is that he simultaneously highlighted America's incredibly diverse ancestry, pulling influences from France, India, Palestine.
Yeah.
It's almost like he was acknowledging this inherent tension of building a nation on equality while excluding so many.
Yeah, that tension is at the heart of the book. And to really understand it, you have to look at Columbus. Unlike explorers like Marco Polo, who meticulously documented the cultures they encountered, Columbus just viewed the native people he encountered as blank slates, lacking faith, or any form of government.
Right.
And tragically, this became his justification for claiming their land.
It's a chilling starting point
Right.
that sets the stage for what unfolds over the next several centuries. And Lepore doesn't hold back in highlighting the brutal consequences of the Columbian Exchange. While wealth and people flowed to Europe from the Americas, what flowed in the opposite direction was disease and exploitation. This set the stage for centuries of power imbalances.
And Lepore introduces us to this debate that gets to the core of the morality of conquest. The arguments between Bartolomé de las Casas, a Spanish priest who condemned the atrocities committed against the native people, and Juan Ginés de Sepúlveda, who actually used Aristotle's theory of natural slavery to justify the conquest.
Las Casas' question, "Are they not men?" resonates even today.
It does.
While Sepúlveda went so far as to compare the native people to apes,
Right.
it's a stark example of how philosophical ideas can be used to justify horrific acts.
Oh, absolutely. This conflict between the pursuit of freedom and the simultaneous acceptance of oppression, it becomes even more apparent as Lepore moves on to the American Revolution. You see colonists fighting for their own freedom while clinging to the institution of slavery.
And in the midst of that fight for freedom, English lawyer Edward Coke revived the Magna Carta to challenge King Charles's authority.
Yeah.
And those very arguments would eventually inspire the colonists in their own fight for independence.
Yeah.
It's incredible how those ideas transcended time and place.
What's fascinating is how Lepore reveals the intertwined nature of freedom and oppression in colonial America. For example, during the Pequot War, colonists sold captured Pequot Indians into slavery and then used those profits to buy African slaves.
It's a shocking detail that exposes the hypocrisy at the heart of the colonial enterprise. But then Lepore introduces another layer to this already complex story, the Great Awakening. This religious revival swept through the colonies, emphasizing the equality of souls and challenging established hierarchies.
Yeah, it's as if the seeds of discontent with religious and political authority were being sown simultaneously. Figures like George Whitefield, also known as Dr. Swinton, captivated diverse crowds with his dynamic preaching style and his message of spiritual rebirth.
Wow.
It makes you wonder how these sermons might have influenced people's thinking about authority and equality at the time.
And as the colonies grew, so did the tensions with Great Britain, especially around the issue of taxation without representation.
Yeah, the French and Indian War just added fuel to the fire. The British Crown was in debt and imposed heavier taxes on the colonies without giving them any say in the matter.
Right.
Benjamin Franklin was really essential in voicing those frustrations and anxieties about British rule.
But even after the Revolution, that problem of slavery persisted. Lepore confronts us with this moral dilemma head-on, asking us to think about figures like James Madison, who was grappling with the question of slavery while also drafting a constitution that ultimately failed to fully address it.
It's a jarring juxtaposition. Madison, this architect of American democracy, owning slaves. And that tension continues to play out in the early republic. Northern states start abolishing slavery while it expands in the South. Figures like John Jay framed emancipation as a moral imperative, yet the Constitution included that 3/5 as compromise.
That compromise, counting enslaved people as less than fully human for the purpose of representation, really highlights that gap between the ideals of equality and the reality of inequality in the early American Republic. A nation founded on the promise of equality was still denying that promise to millions.
Exactly. And that tension only intensifies as we move into the 19th century. You see this incredible expansion of democracy with voting rights expanding and political parties emerging. But at the same time, industrial capitalism is taking root, and technology begins to reshape society in these profound ways. It's progress, but it's also creating new forms of inequality.
Yeah, it really does feel like taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Then Lepore introduces us to Maria Stewart, a black abolitionist who directly challenges America to confront its original sin of slavery. Even as democratic ideals spread, that deeply flawed legacy of slavery continued to cast a shadow over the nation.
Stewart's voice is a reminder that progress is rarely a straight line. And even the Civil War, which finally ended slavery, didn't erase the deep scars of inequality. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation marked a turning point, but the fight for true equality continued long after the war ended.
And that fight takes on new dimensions as we enter the 20th century. Technology continues to reshape American society, but Lepore points out how it can also be used to control and manipulate people. Think about the rise of public relations and these increasingly sophisticated political campaigns. It's almost as if the very tools of democracy are being turned against it.
It's a fascinating and unsettling observation. And as America emerges as a global superpower, it faces new challenges, both domestically and internationally. World War II forces a reckoning with the horrors of fascism, but that victory is quickly overshadowed by the looming threat of the Cold War.
That Cold War anxiety really fueled a period of intense political polarization, didn't it? I mean, the fear of communism was palpable.
Absolutely. And figures like Joseph McCarthy exploited those anxieties for political gain, reminding us that even in a democracy, demagogues can rise to power by preying on people's fears.
Meanwhile, the fight for civil rights continues. The Brown v. Board of Education decision was a landmark victory, declaring school segregation unconstitutional. But Lepore doesn't let us forget the fierce resistance that followed. It's a sobering reminder that legal victories don't always translate into immediate social change.
The struggle for equality requires sustained effort, courage, and sacrifice. Think of the Freedom Riders who challenged segregation in the South, risking their lives for a just cause. And even then, there was growing frustration, with figures like Malcolm X questioning the effectiveness of nonviolent resistance.
The 1960s were such a tumultuous decade in American history. The Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, the rise of the counterculture. It was a period of both incredible progress and deep turmoil. It felt like the nation was simultaneously coming together and falling apart.
The assassination of John F. Kennedy left a deep wound on the national psyche, and the country grappled with these profound questions about violence, justice, and the future of democracy. And as we move into the 1970s, the political landscape continues to shift dramatically.
Lepore explores the rise of the New Right and the resurgence of conservative activism, particularly Phyllis Schlafly's opposition to the Equal Rights Amendment. It feels like this is where the fault lines of American politics become even more deeply entrenched.
And those divisions only intensify in the following decades. The abortion debate becomes a central battleground in the culture wars, and gun control emerges as another flashpoint. It's a period where meaningful dialogue breaks down and people retreat into their own ideological echo chambers.
And throughout all of this, technology keeps transforming American society. Lepore discusses the rise of personal computers and the internet, highlighting both the incredible potential and the inherent dangers. It was a time of such rapid change, and the implications weren't always clear.
The internet connected people in unprecedented ways, opening up new avenues for communication and collaboration. But it also created opportunities for division and manipulation. Lepore explores the rise of online echo chambers and the spread of misinformation, reminding us that even the most transformative technologies can be used for both good and ill.
Then, September 11th happened, a day that irrevocably changed the course of American history. The aftermath of the attacks, the war on terror, the anxieties about security and privacy, Lepore takes us through it all. It was a period where the nation faced new threats and grappled with these incredibly difficult choices about how to respond.
The presidency of George W. Bush marked a turning point. The United States embarked on a series of military interventions and expanded its surveillance powers. The political climate became even more polarized, and public trust in government eroded further. The consequences of those decisions made during that tumultuous period still resonate today.
And then, in this landscape of division and distrust, Barack Obama is elected as the first black president of the United States, ushering in a wave of hope and possibility.
It was a historic moment. a testament to the enduring power of the American ideal of equality. But even then, those forces of division and distrust persisted, fueled in part by the rise of social media and the spread of conspiracy theories.
The Obama presidency was marked by both progress and frustration. A period where healthcare expanded, but these deep divisions on race, class, and inequality remained. And then, almost inevitably, came the rise of Donald Trump.
Trump's election represented a rejection of established norms and a triumph of populism. His presidency was chaotic and divisive, further eroding trust in institutions and deepening the political divide. And this is where Lepore's book leaves us. On a note of caution, she urges us to confront the challenges facing American democracy and to rededicate ourselves to the pursuit of its ideals.
It's a powerful and timely message, a reminder that the story of America is still being written, and that each generation has a role to play in shaping its future. It really is a story that's still being written, and Lepore's book is a call to action. It's urging us to acknowledge that the American experiment, this experiment in democracy, it's fragile, the pursuit of equality, it's an ongoing struggle. And the choices that we make today, they're going to shape the future of this nation.
What really struck me when I was reading these truths was Lepore's ability to connect these seemingly disparate events and ideas. She demonstrates how decisions that were made centuries ago continue to have repercussions today. It's like she's revealing these hidden threads that connect the past to the present.
She weaves together political and social movements, technological advancements, cultural shifts. It's not just a dry recitation of historical facts, but a living, breathing narrative about ideas and their consequences. And ultimately, it's a story about us, about who we are as a nation and as individuals.
It's a story that's still unfolding. And for me, the most compelling takeaway from the book is this recurring tension between these ideals of equality and the realities of inequality. We see it throughout American history, from the founding era to the civil rights movement to, to this very moment.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that building a more just and equitable society is a continuous process, a journey that demands our constant attention and effort.
And these truths, it challenges us to think critically about the narratives that we've inherited, to engage in honest, open conversations about both the past and the present.
Absolutely. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just something that happened long ago. It's a force that shapes our world today, influencing who we are and the choices we make. If you're ready to explore this rich and thought-provoking journey through American history, we highly recommend reading These Truths by Jill Lepore.
It's a book that will challenge your assumptions, deepen your understanding of the past, and encourage you to think differently about the future.
You can find a link to purchase the book in the description below. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to the Mindful Moments channel for more deep dives into fascinating books and ideas just like this one. We're committed to bringing you fresh perspectives and insightful analysis to nourish your mind on the go. Thanks for joining us for this exploration of these truths. We'll see you in the next episode.